Hi, and welcome everyone to the Garden Hour with MU Extension. My name is Debi Kelly, and I am so happy that you guys are with us. And I'll turn on my video so you guys can see who I am. I am a horticulture specialist. I'm based in Jefferson County, just south of St. Louis. We have a lot of folks that are here going to answer your questions. We're already starting to get a lot of questions coming in from you all asking about this and that, because we know that we've all been cooped up inside our houses all winter. I don't know about you, but about this time of the year, I really get the doldrums where it's the clouds and it's the rain and the cold, and I just itching to get outside. So if I feel like you guys are too. So we're really happy to have you with us. There's a group of us that are going to be around answering those questions. Here's a map of all of who we are, and you'll notice that this map has actually been updated. This position up in the northwestern part of the state, actually, we have it filled. We do know who's going to be working in that position. He will not be starting until the 1st of June, but that position is filled, so we're really excited to see that. We still have that open position down in the southeast. We're waiting for folks, some good qualified people to come and fill that position. And then we will have a position in Boone County that will also be working with some of the folks that are on campus as well as the field specialists. And we're waiting for that position to be announced and have applicants come in. So we have our emails that are listed there. So if you have additional questions, if you're in a county where no one's listed, by all means, contact one of us that are next to the area or any one of us, and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you. We have Jennifer is going to be our moderator. Tamara, our guru when it comes to technology, is going to be in the chat box. And we have Ask Our Questions Now, and I believe that is Pong. And so we'll go ahead and I'm going to get us jump started. I'm happy to introduce to you all Dr. Tony Lupo. He is filling in at this time for us. Pat Ganan, our weatherman, as we would call him, actually retired. And so Tony is sitting in for us at this point. And he's going to provide us with the weather report for us. He is traveling right now. I have the screen up, so he's going to tell me when he's interested in me moving the slides forward. So Tony, thank you for being with us and filling in. We greatly appreciate it. We know the weather aspect of the Garden Hour is something that our participants year after year on the survey say they really enjoy and look forward to each week. So thank you, Tony. I'll let you go ahead and go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's flip the screen to the next slide. And what you're seeing is valid from yesterday, but I'll give you a little bit of information of what's going on today as well. Again, as Debbie said, I'm in the boot heel right now, and the temperature here is almost 70 degrees. And in the upper parts of Missouri, northern Missouri, it's probably more like 45, 50 right now. You can see that the afternoon temperatures yesterday dropped a little bit from around noon. It was around 60, 65 in a lot of places. A weak cold front came by. And on the right-hand side, you can see the 24-hour temperature change from yesterday. And again, that weak cold front showed that Monday was just a little, or Tuesday was just a little cooler than Monday. All right, next slide. Okay, yesterday across the state, we received about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of precipitation in most places. And in fact, if you live in central Missouri, more specifically Boone County and northern Randolph County, you got the most precipitation of anybody. Some places got as much as 6/10 of an inch of rain. The map that I'm showing you here probably isn't rendering as well as I'd like, but you can see the outline of Missouri, and that's the rainfall we've had in the last 30 days. You can see that we've had anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of rain in a lot of parts of Missouri, and that's helped to continue the drought relief. Next slide, please. That's the drought monitor map, and that is showing again continued improvement for everything east of Missouri. A lot of these areas were in drought last fall, but we're slowly eliminating that. And as you can see, the drier conditions are confined to the plain states from Texas to the Dakotas. But Missouri is continuing to see improvement, and we will continue that trend. The only dark lining, if you will, in that silver cloud is the fact that that dry weather is sitting almost on the Kansas border. And what that means is that the typical areas for severe weather this spring may set up more over Missouri and Arkansas rather than points further west. But we'll see how this goes. Hopefully that won't be the case. But severe weather does tend to set up between areas that are dry and moist. Next slide, please. So far, we're running well above normal for January and February. And the precipitation for February has been about normal, although January and December were a combined 2 inches below normal, which is about 67% of what we normally receive. Why has that been? Well, in the map that you see with the nice colors on it, we see a kind of a ridge in the jet stream over California, Canada, Alaska, and that's helped to keep us quite warm and dry compared to, say, the Northeast US, where a lot of the cold air masses have been tracking toward their region. The map on the right-hand side shows you the difference from normal for these pressures. That again, the map on the left is a pressure map about halfway up the atmosphere. The map on the right shows you that it has been above normal for much of the east, including Missouri. And again, that's why we're receiving very warm conditions for us. But we're averaging about 6 degrees above normal since Jan 1, which is a blessing and a curse. For those of you who are gardeners, you may be noticing your daffodils coming up. This morning, I actually found a flower bud on one of mine. Next slide, please. The forecast for the next 7 days, some drought relief again, more to our south and east, and some to our north and west. Mid-Missouri will see some precipitation, as you can see in the square there. Places farther south in the boot heel will get more. Next slide, please. And this is what folks think about the weather for the next 6 to 10 days. We're going to see cooler conditions in the west relative to normal and warmer conditions in the east. Now, over Missouri, you can kind of see the words near normal. All right, near normal. And that's because expected to be fairly close to normal. Precipitation wise, looks like we'll be a little on the wetter side, which is good. Again, we'll continue to see some of that drought relief, and even points out west we'll begin to see some of that. Next slide, please. This is the 3 to 4 week outlook, and I get that from the same place that was in the chat box. Again, for the next 1 to 4 weeks, we're expecting that colder conditions to be holding in the northwest, southeast, a little warm. In Missouri, they say equal chances. Now that's very different from near normal. Equal chances means they don't know which way it'll go. So it'll be interesting to see in the next 3 to 4 weeks whether the warmer or the colder conditions prevail. But personally, I'm predicting that warmer conditions will prevail. Precipitation probability. going to continue above normal and some in mid-March. Oh, next slide. Okay, here's the 5-day forecast, and I put out a Facebook page every day where I give out a 5-day forecast because so many people ask me for it. I figured I might as well put it on Facebook. So if you're interested in the Mid-Missouri weather page, it is the Facebook page is shown there, so that if you want to join it, you can. And Missouri, I consider everything from Route 36 in the north to I-44 in the south. And last slide, please. So you're free to join that. What I'm seeing is that we'll get some rain Wednesday night into Thursday. We're going to see some snow out of this. And in fact, there is a winter storm warning for places north of St. Joe in the northwest part of the state, running up through the Iowa border. So those areas could see 3 to 5 inches of snow. But generally in the Route 36 corridor to the I-70 corridor, you may see as much as an inch. Most of us will see less than that. Rain-wise, we'll see about a 1/4 inch to 3/4 of an inch, and then maybe have another shot on Monday. And Thursday and Friday, I think, are going to be cool throughout the state for this time of year. Highs in the 30s in mid-Missouri on north, 40s for the south, lows in the teens and 20s, but closer to 30 in the southern part of the state. Then warming up for the weekend and early next week with highs generally in the 50s and lows in the 30s to near 40. And that is the forecast. So do I get to take questions?
Are there any questions that are out there that came in, Tamara?
There's no question.
Oh. Thank
Okay.
you, Pong. Thank you, Tony. We appreciate you being with us. And so what I'd like to go ahead and do now is to turn it over to Jennifer, who's going to lead us through the rest of the morning.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. And good afternoon, everyone, from Kirksville, Missouri, where it is only 36 degrees, quite a difference from the 70 down in southeast Missouri. So we'll get started with our questions. And our first question is, can you please give instruction on pruning home garden grapes? Also, can a grapevine be transplanted or propagated? And Katie is going to answer that question.
All right, can you see my slides?
Yes.
All right. So grape pruning and training, there were several things we need to think through. So really it's ideal to choose a training system before you plant. And criteria for choosing that system is the type of vine planted, what space you have available, and also the expertise of the grower. There are lots and lots of options out there. And a lot of it also depends on the type of grape you choose, because grapes grow in different ways, and that also leads into how we train them and prune them. So first off, we need some grape terminology. So we do have a trunk. So just like you would think of with a tree, we have a trunk. Sometimes we can have a single trunk. Sometimes we can have double trunks. And then off of that trunk on a wire typically comes off what we call a cordon. And off of that cordon comes spurs, and those spurs have a certain number of buds on them, and those buds grow out into leaves and your flower clusters that become grapes. So knowing that also helps terminology with pruning and training. Trellises. So as mentioned, there are lots of different types of trellises. Something very, very important with any kind of trellis you choose is to have anchoring And because when there are grapes on, and grapevines are very vigorous, so it holds a lot of weight. So we have to think about those braces at the end. There are lots of plans available and different information and schematics out there, but making sure you have that bracing appropriate, the heavy enough wire, all big enough post, all make a huge difference in how successful that trellis system is. So one of the most common training systems is a single curtain cordon system. So when we plant them, we remove all but 2 buds. So down here we can look and see that perhaps those little sticks are those 2 buds. And that first growing season, we select 1 cane, and we'll remove all the others, and we'll train this on a wire to go up to that top wire on our trellis system. So that is going to become our trunk. In the second growing season, we select 2 cordons to tie to the top wire. So we actually are training them to do this. We're tying them. They're not going to stay on that wire by themselves. So we do have to tie them to the wire to form those cordon arms out. In the third growing season, we leave 1 fruit cluster per shoot. We position those shoots to grow downward, forming a curtain from that top wire. So ideally, they are going down like you see in this picture. And later on, when we prune, those become those spurs that I showed in the first picture. So that third dormant season, in the dormant, so this time of year, we prune those spurs. Typically, plants are spaced 10 to 12 feet apart, and then 4 or less buds per each of those spurs. A lot of times those spurs are at least a hand width apart, so 6 to 8 inches apart, and you can kind of see that in this graph where there's spurs are hanging down. And you can see those buds on them. And then grapes grow extremely fast. There is lots and lots of pruning to be done in the wintertime to remove all of that growth and prepare for that next growing season. There are other lots of different methods. Cordon, this one is showing from the top wire down. Some like to grow up, so the cordon may be at knee height and the shoots grow up, and you have what we call catch wires, so 2 wires that you will put shoots in between those 2 wires. There's an umbrella system, there's fan systems, there's lots and lots more out there. As mentioned, a lot of it depends on the grape themselves, and some of these are easier to prune than others. Also, in a home garden situation, arbors or overhead structures can also be fun. So grapes like to go on arbors and provide that shade, and you can also still prune them and get grapes. Pruning becomes a little more difficult when you're thinking about using a ladder to go up as opposed to on a traditional trellis system. And also mentioned was talking about transplanting grapes or grape propagation. I don't really have much experience of actually trying to transplant a grape plant. I would say some of it's going to matter as far as size and how much equipment you have, how much digging you want to do, that type of thing. But grapes are readily propagated from dormant cuttings. So they are taken during the dormant season. Typically, they're 1-year-old growth, slightly bigger than a pencil, and we want long, straight shoots. Big thing is to know which side is right side up. They do not work if you plant them upside down. So knowing the direction of those buds, although sometimes the way the vines grow, that can be a little bit challenging. So one thing to do is to cut the bottom straight and the top at an angle, so that way you know which side is right side up. Typically, those cuttings are 12 to 18 inches long. We want at least 4 buds. 3 of those buds go underground, and that should be rooting hormone on there on the base, and then stuck in the soil as soon as they are cut. And then one caveat I will also make is know your source, because we have a lot of grapes that have virus problems. And those viruses can be spread through propagation. So knowing that source and making sure you have a good, clean source before you start from cuttings is important. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Katie. Good information there.
Katie,
Our next-
do you mind asking answer a question, or we gonna do to? Oh, okay. I received 2 questions. The first question is, I've been growing 2 big nose vines on my backyard wooden fence for 2 years now, and they have been growing pretty well. Just curious if they will be getting enough light long term with the fence running north and south and the milling having eastern exposure. It's about the light exposure things.
Sure. And some of that's going to depend on what else is around it. But a typical rule of thumb for full sunlight is 6 to 8 hours. So start checking it out. Winter time is hard because sun is different in the winter. But during the growing season, start looking at how much sun exposure is there in the morning and throughout the day, and see how long that is.
Thank you. The second question, when is the best time to trim grapes in southeast Missouri?
Now, it is during the dormant season. I always joke that most of our fruit plants, we do prune during the dormant season. So actually today would be a wonderful day here in southeast Missouri to go out. You're not going to freeze while you're out pruning. Although if you're in the northern part where Jennifer is, it's a little colder to prune right now, but it is time to get pruning, and we'll see what the weather does the rest of the spring, but now is the pruning time.
Thank you, Kitty. That's all I have.
All right, so we'll move on to our next question, which is, I would like to know how and what flowers to grow for a cut flower business. And Donna is going to answer that.
Okay, so one of my favorite topics is the cut flower garden, and I'm just going to walk through a few things about it. Try not to spend too much time on it, but it's always an exciting topic for most people because they love flowers. And so let me get my PowerPoint work. There we go. So when you start thinking about cut flowers, whether you're wanting to grow them at home or for a business, you really have to ask yourself some questions, because it's all about planning. Because cut flowers, it's not about just planting once. You've got to do succession planting, where you plant once, wait about 2 or 3 weeks, plant again, wait 2 or 3 weeks, plant again. And that way you have continuous blooms so that you can have bouquets all season long. Because if you only plant once, then you've only got the bulk of your blooms coming in at one time, and then they quickly fizzle. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So a couple of questions to ask yourself before you start really thinking about getting into cut flowers very much is, one is, what do you like? Think about your favorite flowers, your favorite colors, your favorite shapes, because there are lots and lots of flowers out there, lots and lots of opportunities. And so think about those things, because when you start looking at those catalogs and websites, oh, wow, you want to talk about eye candy, lots and lots of beautiful blooms, and you can get carried away. My suggestion is to start small, start with a few things and see if you can do it. And see what you do have to take on for planting and prepping and trying to get them to market if you want to be selling them. Take a look at the catalogs and online, and look for the scissor symbols on packets, and like I said, in the catalogs. And that way, those are going to dictate which ones are the cutting flowers versus non-cutting flowers. Look for varieties of long stems. In a moment, I'm going to talk about marigolds. Prime example, most marigolds have short stems. And there are specific varieties that have the longer stems that will work wonderfully for cut flowers, but you have to know what to look for. The thing is diversify. I can't say that enough on anything in horticulture. Diversity is key to a lot of different things. You want short flowers, tall flowers, big flowers, little flowers, bright colored. You want muted tones. You want something green for greenery. And so just think about that. You want it all over the board versus one or two items. So once again, I said earlier, start small. This sort of counteracts or goes against that grain. But that's why I said start with what you like first and then spread out, but keep it diversified. The other thing is some things will have to be started by seed and some of them will have to be started by transplants. And so that is a learning process also, because most of us are going to start things from seed either indoors or we're going to sow seeds outdoors. And so it's important to understand that whole process. But just keep in mind that you've got to be able to start them, be able to plant them out in the garden. If you expect to buy them from somewhere else already in plant form, you're going to be investing a lot of money that you might not be getting back. And then of course, think about this. A lot of them will get top heavy because the blooms are heavy. And so you will need netting, staking, caging, and you have to know which flowers require what. So I'm going to run through some of the varieties. The first couple slides are mainstays. Those are the ones I recommend anytime we talk about cut flowers. Zinnias are probably my top pick. I heard a speaker once say that off of a pound of zinnias, you can make quite a bit of money. I can't remember what the exact figure was, but it was amazing. It made me go, whoa, you know, there's a market for that. But it depends on where you're at, because, you know, if you're in a rural area, they might not value flowers as much as they might value them in the urban areas. Cosmos is another mainstay. And I do know that with Cosmos, be careful how thick you plant them, because then they get tall and lanky and floppy. You want real strong stems that hold up well. That is key. Another one that a lot of people will go to is the sunflowers. And sunflowers and things like zinnias, you are going to direct sow, which makes them also easier because you don't have to start them indoors. Sunflowers, they come in every color now, every height, every size. They even have some really nice pollen-less varieties, and that's what you want to target when you're thinking about cut flowers. Marigolds, once again, is an awesome, vibrant colored flower. But if you do the marigolds, make sure you're getting the long stems, because a lot of the varieties out there are very compact and short. So two different varieties to deal with, or two different types of marigolds. Black-eyed Susan, once again, there's lots and lots of different variations. There's ones that are brown, red. Some of them have rust in the center. Some of them are all yellow. Some of them are more of a yellow-orange. Once again, lots of different varieties out there, and they all do really well in bouquets. Another mainstay is coneflower. And once again, it's a wonderful plant to have growing. It is a perennial, whereas the other ones are annuals. So the coneflower, you probably have to, you know, think a little ahead of time, just to have that as a mainstay, because it needs to already be growing prior to the cut flower process. I just threw these pictures together because, you know, I showed you what the mainstays are.
Hello.
But there are lots and lots of opportunities out there to have
I'm
other
okay. How are
flowers
you?
too, from coxcomb to globe amaranth to dianthus. You know, but big thing that you have to worry about on some of these, once again, is that stem length. And you want to make sure they are cut flower varieties, and that way you can use them for the bouquets. Perennials, lots of different options. Also, as you can see, you can probably name just about everyone on this page. But once again, there's so many different possibilities out there for doing a flower garden. So just keep that in mind. I definitely say do some internet searches, stick with your extension resources. There are a couple of good retail websites I'm going to show you also that have good resources. But this is a guide that I made a couple of years ago. Yes, it says youth gardening activity, but it's packed full of information that could easily get you started, whether you want to do cut flower garden in your own backyard or even, at a small farmer's market. Now, if you want to do something a little bigger than that, then that's when I would say, hey, you need to probably go to Johnny's Selected Seeds. They have a huge resource base there that it will actually give you plans. It will show you 1,000 square foot area, and it will divide it into different varieties that you can go seek out. Flowers are expensive right now. The seeds are expensive. So, I buy some things from Johnny's Seeds, but then other things I'm like, oh, I cannot pay that much. So I am pretty picky because I don't want to put a lot of money into it. Another one that has lots and lots of good resources is Florette's Flower Farm. Once again, it has lots of how-to videos, lots of guides that you can print off and that will walk you through it. Another one is Cut Flower website with NC State University, and it is more geared toward that commercial grower. It's geared towards getting you into that flower business. And so these are just some really good resources, whether you're wanting to do just a small hobby, or if you're wanting to do a commercial type business. So if any of you ever have any questions or want to talk about cut flowers, just reach out to me and we'll have a really nice conversation. Like I said, I love flowers. Okay, back to you, Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Donna. And I too love cut flowers, and I'm working with some cut flower growers, and I grow cut flowers. So if anyone in Northeast Missouri has questions about how to get started with cut flowers, you can reach out to me at the Adair County Extension Office. Now, moving on to our next question. It is, the buds on my rose bushes are not flowering as before. Why? And I am going to answer this question. All right, so why might the rose buds not open and bloom? And this is a flower here, a rose flower in bloom at Chance Gardens in Centralia. I love going to Chance Gardens when I'm in that area. They have lots of different rose bushes. And if you've never been, I would encourage you to stop by and take a look. It is free, so they don't charge admission, and they are usually in peak bloom in late June-ish to July. And I just happened to see a bumblebee on this rose and capture that photo. So you want to select rose bushes that are hardy for your area. So maybe a reason that they're not opening up is that they, one, are not hardy. Maybe they are hardy, but the buds froze in a late spring freeze. Or maybe the buds got nipped by frost. And I have photos here on the right of 2 rose bushes that I found at a local, I'll call it a box store here in Kirksville. And if you look down at the zone, it says on the first one, the Olympiad, that it is for zone 6 to 9, which that's most of Missouri. But here in Northeast Missouri, they're probably only going to be marginally hardy. So it may survive, it may not. And then the other one, the fragrant plum, that is hardy to zone 7 to 10. Well, we're definitely not in zone 7 in the northern half of Missouri. I think you have to go down into the Boot Hill to get into zone 7. So these rose bushes were being sold at a local store, again, here in Kirksville, which we're in zone 5. So these should not have been sold. And when you see these, you just need to be aware that if you live in northern Missouri, they're probably not going to survive. So just a heads up on that. Another reason that rose blooms may not open, and this is really true for other flowers too, and other cut flowers, some reasons that they may not bloom is botrytis. Botrytis blight can attack the buds as well as other parts of the flower, and it is caused by a fungus. It, like I said, can attack different parts of the plant, like the leaves and the canes, and it will prevent the blooms from opening up. And what you may notice is brown on the leaves, brown on the buds, like you see in the photos here. And then they just start to shrivel up. And I have seen that. I've actually seen this many times. I've seen it on peonies, and that's a peony there on the right. So if you see your flower buds, again, really on any flower, turning brown and starting to dry or shrivel, it's probably from botrytis, or what we also call botrytis blight. And this is going to probably be more common in a wet, humid spring. And what you can do is use a fungicide that is labeled for roses or cut flowers, and also use good sanitation practices. Another reason that roses or other flowers may not bloom, or the buds may never open, is that they got overwatered. So when a plant is overwatered and the roots start rotting, that can prevent the buds from opening up. So make sure that you're not giving your plants too much water and causing them to get root rot. And another thing that causes buds not to open is insect damage. And I have seen this happen also. It can be caused from several different insects. It could be thrips, which is a real small insect that will get down into the buds. They also get in flowers. Aphids can also be found on buds and flowers, and Japanese beetles, and there's others. So insects can start feeding on and just causing damage on your flower buds, and they will not open. So that could be another reason. And too much shade might be an issue. So rose bushes need 8 hours of direct sun a day. They will not bloom if they're getting too much shade. So make sure if you're going to plant rose bushes that you put them in a bright, sunny area where they can receive a full 8 hours of sun a day. I'm just ending with this pretty photo here. This is from Chance Gardens. I love orange roses. And you may see some residue on the leaves there. That is probably from them spraying a fungicide, possibly. Black spots are common fungal disease on the leaves of roses. And so to have beautiful looking roses, you really do have to spray them. And that's probably just residue from a spray. But again, those are all things that can cause flower buds on roses and other flowers not to open and bloom. Okay, moving on. Our next agenda item is horticulture terminology, and Debbie is going to discuss that.
Sure, if I push the right buttons, then I know how to do it, right? So let me pull this up.
And Debbie, I wasn't sure how to pronounce that, so I'm going to leave it to you to pronounce.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. So let me put it in this mode here. Well, first of all, let me put it in the right mode here. Okay, now let's do this. All righty, so at my Master Gardener class a week ago Monday, I had one of my Master Gardeners who is an experienced Master Gardener, especially with native plants. That's what she's kind of known for in the group. She came up to me and showed me this particular picture, and she said, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh," and I started scratching my head going, "I really don't know what this is." And so I thought, oh, we need to look this up and find out. So I've got folks here. So a potential answer is it worms inside a seed pod, an appendage of the seed, a disease on the seed?
And we do have a poll activated. Many of you have already found it, but just in case it got hidden, please do find that poll and give us your vote.
Wow, people are still responding. This is cool. All righty, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And 65% of you say B, it's an appendage of the seed. And then C, 19% say it's a disease on the seed, and 15% say it's a worm inside the seed pod. Gee, you know what? You guys are so darn smart. I think that maybe you guys need to be actually teaching some of this stuff over me, because I wasn't sure. But it's aleosome is how it's pronounced. It's actually an appendage off the seed. It's particularly in these three different classifications of plants: the carex, which is a grass-like plant; the lepidosperma, which is also grass-like. See a theme going on here, and that plant is predominantly in Australia; and the cyperus, which are the sedges. So what it really is that seed pod that I showed you was actually from the bloodroot. And that's what the bloodroot looks like if you're walking through the woods. It's a native plant. And that is actually a fleshy structure that's attached to the seeds. It's really an oil-rich appendage. It also has a lot of proteins in it. And that appendage can be shaped a little bit differently depending upon what specific plant it actually is. But what's the key about this appendage is that ants are really attracted to it. They eat the proteins in that appendage itself. So they grab that appendage and they drag that seed with it, take it back to their nest, and then they feed their larvae from that proteins and the oil from that. And then the seed is then kicked out of the nest, and wherever it lands, that is actually where that new plant grows. And that's how these three plant groups actually transport their seeds from where they are to a new location. So I learned something new when I was with my master gardeners the other night. So I thought I would share that with you, but you guys are much smarter than I am. Thanks, Jennifer.
All right, moving on. Pong is now going to talk about broadleaf evergreens dropping leaves.
Hello, everyone. I recently received a set of photos from my colleague regarding a client's question about the southern magnolia disease. As you can see from those the set of photos, there are definitely some leaves are turning yellow and brown, especially the lower ones, as you can see here and here. And you can actually see some spots on the lower leaves, especially on the older leaves. However, on the younger one on the top, they seem to be less affected. I'm so glad the client also made a cut. As you can see into the inside of the stem, there's no discoloration, sort of indicating that there are no stem canker or stem blight disease. And if you look at the whole plant, the leaves are now wilting. And as you know, we didn't have a lot of rainfall in the past couple of months. So we probably can rule out the potential root rot disease or soil-borne disease. So what could be the cause for these symptoms? Before going to the disease, let's first talk about the broad-leaved evergreens in Missouri. So here I give you a couple examples, because when we talk about evergreens, we immediately think about the conifer family, pine tree, spruce, and juniper that keep green through the winter. But do you know in Missouri we have broadleaf evergreen trees? For example, the southern magnolia, azalea, boxwood, holly, and the viburnum, they definitely add a lot of color in the winter. So while there are not many diseases caused by insects or plant pathogen at this time of the year, since all of them are become dormant, we may still see some plant diseases caused by abiotic factors, which is not associated with a living organism, much more like an environmental stress. Remember last year, the majority area of Missouri have gone through the severe drought. And during the Christmas break, we experienced a period of unusual coldness, at least for Columbia and Boone County area. And together, they add lots of stress to the evergreen plants, especially the broad-leaved plants. So today I'm going to focus on some abiotic diseases and briefly discuss about the management methods. So let's first talk about the first one, cold injury, which is also called a winter drying. It is very common disease for broadleaf evergreens in some exposed area. There are two major factors. The strong and cold wind can cause the leaf to lose water really fast. At the same time, if the soil has been frozen for extended period of time, it will not allow the plant to take up water, enough water to the top. As you can see from this photo, this is a bunch of boxwoods suffering from the winter injury on the top of the canopy. They are all turn to a yellow and a brown. And over time, as the temperature rise up, they will eventually fall, and the new growth will come up and cover the part. That really depends on the severity of the winter injury. Right now, I mentioned about temperature rise up, why it will enhance the damage of the winter injury. That will lead to the second plant disease called by abiotic factor, which is called winter scorch. So with the temperature rising up, and if the plant was exposed to the direct sunlight, over time, you will have the symptom like a sunburn. So this is normally happen to the foliage that are facing directly sunlight or direct to the strong wind. Over time, the foliage will dry and turn brown. Sometimes the leaf will curl and drop, and you may see some lesions showed up on the edge of the leaves. And in contrast, the foliage under the snow or facing away from the sun or direct wind is usually not damaged. And at the same time, over time, you will see some fungal structure growing at it, making you think, oh, we have some fungal diseases from the plants. And but they're not a primary reason. So with the cold injury and the winter scorch, together will make the plant really susceptible to the insect disease. So how to control this abiotic disease? First, a location. If you plant the evergreen broadleaf plants, make sure you plant them to a location that are receiving enough protection from wind or afternoon sun, especially in winter. North and east side of building are ideal. So you can use some fence or use some large plant to produce some shade to protect the wind and the sun. Second, I saw that in the chat group, we asked a lot about question about prune or not prune. So for broadleaves evergreen, only prune when it is necessary. Prune, focus on the dead branches, and prune that in the winter time or early spring when the plant is still in dormant, so that you will not introduce more damages. And the third one is make sure the soil is high in organic matters, and fertilize the broadleaves in evergreen only in the spring, because if you do the fertilization in the summer or in the fall, it will trigger more late season growth that is highly susceptible to the winter injury or winter burn. Of course, we mentioned a lot about importance of the water, have better irrigation in the late fall through the winter if the rainfall is scant. And it's really important to keep the soil moisture. And the last one is have the proper mulch, and the proper mulching will help the root to kind of insulate it from the severe fluctuation of the soil temperature and reduce water loss. And I know Jennifer is about to talk about the heave. So the mulching actually is really good to help protect the roots from the heaving issue due to that occurs when soil goes through the cycle of the freezing and the thawing during the winter. I'm not sure whether Jennifer has the time, but I really look forward to her talk. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. But unfortunately, we are out of time, so I'm not going to be able to show you any photos of heaving. But for those of you that might be experiencing heaving with your plants, your garden stakes, that is a pushing of plants or stakes up out of the ground due to the freezing, thawing of the soil. And if you have stakes that were like holding down row cover, go out and push those back down. And any plants that got heaved right now, you probably just want to cover them up with some mulch. And then in the spring, you can, dig a hole, plant them back down, but don't go and stomp down on the soil real hard. You don't want to disturb the root system. And for more information on heaving, just reach out to one of us and we'll be glad to help you out with that. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Debbie.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is go ahead and end this for today. And there we go. Learning how to use the two screens in the office. So Tamara put into the chat box, if you want to save any of those resources and links, just go ahead and click on the three dots that are in the chat box. This is an old picture. These three items are now down here for me. So you may just kind of glance around and just click on that, and you can save it to your computer for later going back and trying to catch some of that information. Remember, we do this on YouTube. If you've missed part of this or you want to come back and listen to it again, you can always go to our YouTube channel, and you will notice that we have this kind of a drawing here, and our latest live stream will be up. Then also future upcoming, and I didn't update this, I apologize, but our next garden hour is going to be on March 15th from noon to 1 p.m. We'll be happy to have you back then. And remember, you can upload pictures. Just go back out to where you registered initially to get an email every Wednesday morning that we have the town hall, and you can actually upload a picture at that same location. Or if that's that's also where you want to go back if you want to ask us a question as well and have us answer it on the town hall. And once again, here is our contact information. If it brought up things in your mind, sparked ideas, that you've got questions, feel free to go ahead and email one of us, and we'll be happy to answer that question for you. In the meantime, have a great rest of this month, and we'll see you back in March. Thanks for joining.